Hello, everybody, and welcome to our show. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with my good friend and colleague, Jeff Bradbury. Recently, Jeff and I had the opportunity to participate in the National Retail Federation Big Show. And today, we'd like to share with you some of our insights and some of the things that we saw. Jeff, would you mind kicking us off and telling us a little bit about your experience there?
I actually enjoyed it. I felt NRF is always such a big, boisterous event. You're kind of pushing your way through crowds. It's almost impossible to cover the entire floor efficiently. You're fighting to find a space to have a conversation with somebody, or even just sit down to rest your feet for a minute or two. I liked the show this year. I liked it had a slightly less dense feel. There were more open areas where there were tables set up where you could sit down and have a conversation with somebody you bumped into, an old colleague or an old friend. The pace was just a little less hectic, not I certainly wouldn't say easy, but a little less hectic than usual. And just generally, you had a chance to sort of slow down a bit and take a little bit more time talking to people, seeing the various displays and demonstrations that were up, attend a few more sessions. So I think overall NRF was a great success this year from my perspective.
I would have to agree with you. I think there's a lot of discussion about how kind of the low turnout, and maybe some even complaints about how a lot of the keynotes and a lot of the sessions were actually virtual as opposed to live and in person. I've been going to NRF for over a decade, and I would say that as expected, it was a very different experience. But one of the things that really kind of surprised me and shocked me, I think everything kind of changed after I sat down actually at one of the first big idea sessions. And again, it was another session where the retailer did not show up. They were doing it virtually. But I very quickly got over that disappointment once they started their presentation. If I remember correctly, it was Under Armour. And then later on, there was another presentation by Target. And they were talking about their journey into as a data-driven organization. And for me, when I go to NRF, it's not so much the title of the presentation. It's always about who's presenting. And where retailers did show up over and over again were in these presentations. It was almost as if, because it was virtual, it was easier and more accessible for retailers to come and actually participate and actually share their ideas. And I was very surprised and struck by the transparency and by the kind of openness of what they brought us inside their organizations, and they shared with us the journeys of their digital transformations. And I'm sure we're going to talk quite a bit about that.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think what was interesting was I thought there was a high quality collection of speakers and panelists and whatnot. Like you said, I think maybe because some of it was virtual, we got more people to participate, lots of CEOs, lots of senior executives. And to your point, like you said, I think a lot of people were very, very open about sort of some of the challenges of the last couple of years, how they've reacted to it, where they found traction, where they found solutions. It was good to see the community sort of coming together and having these important conversations about how retail is finding a way to meet the needs of their customers and do it in a way that's adding value to both the organization and the customers. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
A little bit more about that, Jeff. What did you see at NRF? What are the things that kind of struck you?
Well, if we wanted to get deep into the technology side and really kind of start to get into what was actually on display at NRF or some of the interactions we had, I was amazed at the number of robotics demonstrations that were there. 2 years ago, the last time we did a live NRF, if I saw 2 robotics demonstrations, that feels about right. This year, I counted no fewer than 10 large scale, on the floor, real robots moving real racks around, grabbing real packages, demonstrations, and they were all very, very interesting. Some of them had different models that they were using. Some of them obviously had very different designs for the way the robots participated in the picking and movement of goods. But overall, I think just the number of displays and the number of solutions that were being presented and the interesting ways in which the robots were being used was very, very interesting. I think a big takeaway for the industry. And in particular, I think you saw a major emphasis on fulfillment. In years past, the robots were sort of interesting. People were trying to figure out how we were going to use them. You had the robots that were doing the floor cleaning and the sort of the safety stuff and sort of the planogram inventory management in the front of house. You had some stuff in the back of house. You had some of the stuff This year, the big emphasis was on fulfillment and how robotics can automate that fulfillment process. And I think that was a huge takeaway for me. And like I said, the number of presentations, a number of demonstrations that showed different robots performing in different ways, doing different things was very, very interesting. Some were product to people designs. Some were for micro fulfillment, very small footprint, completely automated designs. Some were the more traditional movement of goods into pre-packed boxes designs. But overall, they were all interesting. They all worked very flawlessly. And I think it shows the emphasis in the industry on this fulfillment challenge and getting this part of the store delivery, this part of the store promise right, being able to get goods picked accurately, processed accurately, and fulfilled to customers on the customer preferred basis, right? Is it picked up in store? Is it packaged for shipment? Is it delivered through third party? Split orders, all kinds of things like that. This is becoming a critical enabler and sort of a critical capability set for retailers to meet the needs of their customers.
Thank you for that, Jeff. As you were talking, it reminded me of one of the sessions I saw with Southeastern Grocers, and Anthony Hooker just talked about how, with that floor cleaning robot, they're able to save about an hour or 2 hours of labor per day per store. You think about that, at minimum wage at $15 per hour, it's becoming very easy, over 400 some stores. I mean, that's a multi-million-dollar savings per year. And so I was a little surprised at how simple or how quickly the ROI around these kinds of technologies can emerge. In addition to the robotics, I think, and very much along that same spirit, I think I saw a lot of discussion about automation. There was so much, and I think also being driven by the labor shortage that's currently going on. You can't find the frontline employees, you can't find the store managers. So every person that you are able to find, you want to get the most value and enable them to do the most meaningful work in the store. And so there was a lot of discussion about automation on the back office. I heard a lot of discussion about getting all the paperwork and anything that could possibly be automated out of the store, so that those employees in the store could focus more of their attention. It was not just a work harder or work smarter, not work harder. It's work harder and work smarter. How do we enable the employees to spend more time with their customers in these kind of customer-facing roles, as opposed to doing paperwork in the back office?
You bring up a really interesting point there about where these two automation sort of efforts merge. I think you mentioned earlier about the aisle robots that go up and down the aisles, cleaning the floors and looking for spills and warning guests away from where there might be a hazard of some sort. Very, very valuable, saves a couple hours per day per store. That's fantastic. You add on top of that same robot has near perfect inventory visibility. And through the use of scanners and digital imagery manipulation, right, they're able to tell, is the stock in the right place? So is your planogram being followed properly? Are your inventories right? Are the prices right? Are you out of stock anywhere, right? These are all things that used to require a person to go through the store and do it, with a clipboard or a PDA of some sort manually. You've now got, and by the way, most stores only did that, once a day, twice a day, maybe. Full inventory checks were once a week. You've now got a robot that can do a full inventory check, full planogram validation, and full pricing validation 3 or 4 times a day as the robot makes its normal routine up and down the aisles. So it's doing multiple jobs, taking a bunch of that sort of manual labor off the workforce's plate, giving that workforce more time to focus on the customers who need help, who are looking for advice, or who want need a hand, figuring something out or moving somewhere. And you add to that this idea of the fulfillment side, right? So now you've got this inventory and fulfillment side coming together, and then that's a place where you're talking about a lot of this, robotic process automation, this RPA type work, where you're now integrating your inventory systems with your on the floor of inventory, what's available, merchandising type stuff, and tying that to your fulfillment systems. And you've now automated a bunch of this back of house processing work that used to be very, very complicated and done with a lot of manual intervention on how do you fulfill particular orders. You've got to pick stuff off your front of house shelves, stuff out of your back of store inventory, stuff that might be coming from a warehouse or distribution center, right? You're now getting all of that integrated together. To your point, it's not just about working smarter, not harder. It's about working smarter and getting a little more cycles of work per day by using this sort of automation. Very, very interesting work going on.
And you know what doesn't get very much attention, and probably should, is that human impact of robotics. There was a lot of discussion actually in the Southeastern Grocers presentation about how it's elevated the employee experience in the store. I mean, you have employees who are looking at the robots as if it were their pet almost. It's got a name. And they are very warm when they talk about its role in the office. There are employees who are they have a whole new sense of pride in what they do. One woman is like, I don't just clean floors anymore. I am a robot operator. I mean, that is her job now, and it's given her just a whole new sense of identity and the like. But I think to your earlier point too, as well, is that by eliminating or reducing and minimizing kind of the monotonous type tasks and the like, it's elevating the role of the employee in the store, and it's improving their experience. It's improving their engagement in their role. And so as we take more of the monotonous type task of kind of walking up and down and making sure the shelves are full out of the store and just using the employees where they absolutely need to be, there's a much higher level of satisfaction in the role. And in this day of labor shortage, it's not just finding the employees, it's about keeping the employees too as well.
I think that's a very insightful point. I think I didn't hear anybody at any of these robotic presentations talk about replacing employees.
Yeah.
It's all about how you take some of that workload off so that employee can do a more fulfilling job, a higher value job, a more customer engaging job, and let the robots do, as you said, those sort of labor intensive tasks that have to be done, but don't necessarily sort of bring a lot of fulfillment to the employees, to the employee role, or in a way that really helps elevate the customer experience. And so I think you've hit the nail on the head there.
And we talked quite a bit about the employee experience. Can you talk a little bit about the customer experience? What else did you see at NRF?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I think there's a lot being done to allow the customer to fulfill all of their brand experience, all of their brand engagement in the store environment. It used to be, we used to talk about how can I take things I do in the store and find a way to do them digitally. We're now at a point where we're talking about how do I take all of the amazing things I can do digitally and make them happen in a way in the store that adds value to the customer experience. We've sort of completely flipped that paradigm of where digital plays and how it adds value. And so I think one of the big things I saw was this idea that digital is really the entranceway into the store, and the need for the store experience to be the fullest delivery of the brand experience you can have. So you've got to not only have the traditional things that you could only get in a store, the ability to touch and feel, try stuff on, compare things, actual color to color or texture to texture or whatever, but also bring all of the digital capability to the store as well. And I think, maybe a great example of this is we saw a much greater presentation of these digital displays. Some were magic mirrors, some were interactive video screens, but this ability for a customer to engage with a display in the store and have that display engage back. One magic mirror demonstration had a three-dimensional camera that would scan the customer and then put an avatar of that customer up on the screen, and then dress that avatar in pre-curated outfits that were selected by professional stylists to match that particular person. And then as that avatar was dressed and it brought up the curated collections, the user could pick what collection they wanted, or even within a collection, maybe they liked the jacket and the shirt, but not necessarily the pants, and you could take the pants out and it would make next best recommendations for the next pair of pants that would go with that outfit. Very, very interesting. And then at the end of that interaction, if the customer wanted, right, they could have that exact collection of clothes brought to sale, brought to a sales associate or brought to a checkout location or brought to them. They could have it purchased and bought and packaged and sent to their home, and they could actually even pay at the display interface. Very, very interesting. And, other demonstrations, you would have a display, you would bring a piece of clothing up, and you could scan it, or with an RFID chip on the clothing, it would self-scan itself, and the same thing, it would bring up a display of curated collections around that one piece. It would make recommendations about size and fit, and similar things like that. So I think this idea of being able to present all of the capabilities that we've gotten used to online, but present them in maybe a new way, also present them in a way that integrates more cleanly, more seamlessly with the store experience, is adding vibrancy to this in-store experience that we want to show customers, and we want to have them sort of recognize, like I said earlier, about as being sort of the fullest fulfillment of that brand promise.
You make an interesting point about the digital being the entryway into the store. I think one of the big takeaways that I heard a couple of times, and I'm still getting acclimated to the implications of this, is the paradigm change between the in-store experience and the digital experience. We typically look at the store as the brand experience. This is the place where you go to experience the full wonders of the brand. And then we look at the online as a kind of a transactional experience. This is where I go to buy the products that I've been tied into because of the brand experience. And now with this idea of digital being the entryway into the store, we're looking at the online experience playing a much bigger role as the brand experience. And how do we create, and how are retailers going to be able to recreate the experience, the full brand experience online? And then with COVID and the implications of the pandemic, curbside pickup and the like, the stores are now taking on a new role that's much more transactional. It's people not wanting to go into the store; they just want to get in, get out with the products that they have ordered online. And so I don't know that either loses the previous role in terms of their dominance, but clearly now they are taking on new roles. Online is taking on a brand responsibility. The stores are taking on a fulfillment responsibility.
Two thoughts to add there, because I think again, always insightful. One is, I think you're exactly right. I think what we're seeing in stores is this extension of the digital experience into the store really is there to support the two sort of bifurcated needs you've just described. Customer goes into the store and they want it to be transactional, and that transactional activity, that transactional experience is very, very much influenced by our online experiences, and you've got to be able to do that in the store. I want to be able to order something, have it waiting for me, and I go straight to a BOPIS, a buy online, pick up in store location, or even curbside, and just dropped in my car and I drive off. Very, very transactional. And you need that. And the stores are starting to bring that digital capability into the store to support that transactional need. Interestingly, though, I think you now begin to think about what it means to bring somebody into the store. Very interesting interactions where the stores are figuring out how to bring somebody in with a transactional need, and while in the store, convert it to an experiential need. And so you're finding these very interesting layers where the store is finding reasons to meet the customer's momentary needs, but also expose other opportunities for that customer to stay and get more out of that store journey. So very, very exciting there. I think there's a lot to talk about there, maybe on another conversation. The other interesting thing that I just kind of wanted to talk about this role of what's going on in the store is the role of the IT team, right? The IT team now has a fundamental responsibility to deliver the brand experience. That didn't used to exist even 5 years ago, right? 5 years ago, the IT team was about delivering projects. It was about making sure the lights are on and transactions happen and things work. Now the IT team is really being challenged to be a core component, actually a primary component of delivering that store experience. It is a very new environment for the IT team, moving them away from a project responsibility to a sort of product capability delivery in the store, that experience. and then also making them fundamentally part of the value chain for what makes a customer come to the store, stay engaged, stay loyal, and ultimately drive revenue. So very new role for the IT team, and something that I think is maybe not being, it's not as well appreciated as maybe it should be, because I think it's a big cultural change for the IT teams.
I tell you, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think as we think about the role of IT and how significant they play in the brand experience on behalf of the customer, it's remarkable. It's an indication of how much technology has kind of intruded or disrupted the retail experience. There was so much discussion. I think one of the things that struck me is as retailers are getting their arms around how to use data, how to use AI and machine learning to basically create that personalized experience for their customer. And I think one of the most interesting sessions that I sat in on was when retailers were kind of describing their journey. It's as if you can see a new level of maturity in terms of how they're thinking. It's not just data analytics for the sake of data analytics, as we've talked about for many years now, but it's how do you take an organization from where they are today to become truly data driven. I mean, and it starts with very basic steps. Do you have clean data? Do you have data that's still siloed? Do you have data that what kinds of data and what kinds of actions can be taken on that data? And when we think about this, there's a kind of an evolutional, not an evolution, a process by which an organization starts to acclimate to their use of data. And I was intrigued by the fact that it starts with, in many cases, training. You won't, as a business, be able to take advantage of the data in front of you until you understand the role of data analytics, or even how it works, or even how you can use it, or even how you can trust it. And so it was very interesting to see various frameworks from various retailers as they started to measure themselves in terms of, here we are, it's on our data maturity or AI kind of type process. And here are very specific applications where we are trying to use it, whether it be in trying to handle and minimize the liabilities associated with refunds, online refunds, or price optimizations and the like. But here's the process by which we get the organization around this to trust these insights, and then to take action on these insights in order to kind of realize the business benefit of these new capabilities. And it's remarkable to see that it really is a human process in many ways, that even if you have the right, most perfect insights, if the people don't trust it, if they don't use it, you're not going to get the business value out of it.
Yeah, no, lots to cover there, and I think AI is its own next conversation. Maybe I think we're working on a new article around our own personal AI journey here at Hughes, and sharing some of the things you just described about the cultural change and the need to understand how to use and manage that massive flow of data, and then shape it so that the right parts of it are exposed and we can take action on it. That's a fascinating storyline, and I look forward to getting that article out in the near future. But I think you raise an interesting point that we've been talking about AI for several years, and big data and analytics for twice as long. We are now getting to a point where AI is starting to be infused in every aspect of the business, whether it's, as you mentioned, using AI to track fraud or return results and financial implications. I mentioned earlier about the curated outfits, and if you don't like one piece of the outfit, the system uses AI to select the next best recommendation for that customer. And of course, we see that with Netflix and Amazon and other retailers as well, right? Where you do something and they go, well, if you like this, you like this next thing as well, right? That's all AI generated. We're using AI on our side as a technology supplier, right, to make our own technology work better on behalf of our customers. So we're getting to a point in life where AI is everywhere. And I think we're just now starting to get to a point where that AI is so baked in and so central to the performance expectations of everything we touch. You're starting to see its implications sort of ripple through all industries on how AI is making us, or helping us take that next step forward to be that next bit better at doing whatever individual task we're trying to do, up to and including natural language processing and allowing computers to engage with people that just talk at them. Again, back to this idea of the displays with the customers. Some of the displays, the customer just tells the system what it wants, and the system will show on the display what it thinks the customer is asking for, or whatever. So yeah, lots of interesting things with AI coming down the pike that I think is just going to really continue to greatly impact the industry.
One of the things I kind of noticed on that front is that, we talk a lot about personalization in terms of the customer experience. We talk about using AI and machine learning on the supply chain to try to handle all the disruption that's currently taking place. Some of the other interesting things that I saw at NRF was how AI was being applied to the employee experience, how AI was being used to basically manage the shifts. You don't want employees bored or sitting around doing nothing. And at the same time, you want them to find meaning and fulfillment in their work. And so just even the idea of being able to manage the number of people appropriately to the needs of the shift, or even to be able to manage the employee's performance, to track appropriate KPIs, and then to track and intervene with appropriate additional training to kind of improve and help the employee continue to grow in their role as a frontline worker and the like. It seems like AI has a number of different, very specific applications that might be used to kind of elevate that employee experience. And again, basically help address that labor shortage of how do I find employees? How do I keep them too as well? Jeff, can you talk a little bit about some of the other kinds of technologies? Like what really struck you at NRF?
I think the next sort of big thing that sort of caught my attention was, frictionless and cashierless checkout continues to be a place of great interest. Again, I think any place in the customer journey, the customer process, that you can take friction out of the system, that's something we want to do. We want this customer experience to be as enjoyable and fulfilling as possible. And I think everybody recognizes that waiting in line at the end of your shopping experience to check out is always a bit annoying. You spend all that time figuring out what you want. You've got it ready to go. You're ready to leave the store, and now you just have to wait, right? So I think that's a place that's sort of been it's been getting a lot of attention, but I think it's continuing to get a lot of attention. So it's a couple of just sort of quick experiences here. One is at NRF. One of the things I thought was very, very interesting was Amazon actually set up one of their Amazon Go shops on the mezzanine level where people could go grab lunch. So they had a bunch of prepackaged sandwiches and drinks and chips and fruits and vegetables and salads and whatnot. And using the exact same technology as Amazon Go stores, you scanned yourself into the little display area, picked your stuff off the shelf, walked right out. It was super efficient. I saw lots of people taking advantage of it to pop in and grab a juice or grab something to drink middle of the day. Lots of people queued up around it at lunchtime. But it just goes to show you how far that technology has gotten, and also how much people have sort of acknowledged its reality. And so that was just one example there of how it was being used. But there were lots of other demonstrations showing similar capabilities for different types of environments. Not necessarily all of it was quite as completely frictionless as that example where you just scan yourself in, grab the stuff off the shelf and leave. But a lot of it was using the same technologies, right? The high definition cameras with computer aided vision to see what you're taking off the shelf, shelf sensors. Some use smart baskets where when you put something in a basket, the basket scans what goes in the basket, and so it keeps a running total of what's in your basket. Some use a function where you can pick what you want on your phone or scan something with your phone, and it keeps a running total of what you've scanned. And when you check out, it just kind of matches what you scanned on your phone with what the employee or the vision aided system sees in your basket. And yep, 8 things on your phone, 8 things in your basket, we're good to go, kind of thing. It was really, really interesting. And so I think there's a lot of continued interest and a lot of continued value being sort of exerted on this sort of end of the buying experience to help people get their purchases and get them squared away and get them out the door with as little friction as possible to sort of, again, make that very end of the shopping experience sort of enjoyable.
And it seems like, with each passing year, we're making fairly meaningful steps as an industry to achieving a kind of a more elevated or elegant, efficient kind of checkout experience. I'll tell you that at this year's NRF, one of the things that I did do that was very different from previous decades is I spent all of my time on the show floor in the Innovation and Startup Alley. And I was astounded at just the creativity and the new technologies that were on display there. There was too much to see. I couldn't, even though I was spending full days at NRF, I just couldn't get all that content in one shot. But it was very impressive with just the different ways technology is being used to basically address very specific kind of retail customer experiences, employee experiences, and the like. I think some of the new technologies that really caught my eye were kind of the Bluetooth enabled tags. I mean, these were tags that were basically energized by the scanners that were reading them. And so it's really intriguing to see that, it's probably the next wave of RFID. And we're probably, it's the same problem, right? They're expensive tags, but, if it follows the same kind of mentality a year from now or so, we'll get down to a place where it can be operational at scale. And actually, that was kind of an interesting point, though, too, as well, because as I think about it, it was this idea of embedding these Bluetooth tags into, and, a lot of discussion about sustainability throughout retail. And the whole repurposing of clothing. So the idea of embedding these tags and having a basis by which consumers can continue to engage with the brand after they leave the store. So it's not just about the shopping experience and facilitating the purchase experience. It's about the product experience. It's about realizing that, once you buy a jacket, an outfit, that you through a mobile app or retailer's mobile app, you can continue to learn about the product. You can continue to have an engagement with the brand about the benefits, about the uses, and the like. So there's a lot of novel technologies that create kind of novel implications for the customer experience. Some of the other things that I saw there were just how computer vision, there were several, not just one or two, but several different outfits that were basically leveraging computer vision in terms of fashion trends and the like. And so the whole idea is to sit there and say that, for retailers, it seems like so key to make sure that your merchandise matches with the fashion trends as they change. And some of the interesting capabilities that I saw there were being able to leverage computer vision to do, first of all, full ingest of a customer's catalog, of a retailer's catalog. So there's many challenges here. How do I get all of my products and all my assets into the online experience? But then even more so, how do I get some kind of understanding of how consumers are engaging with my products? And what better place than to see what are they saying and what are they doing and what are they wearing on social media? So a lot of these computer vision capabilities were running through social media channels and being able to very quickly do natural language processing, gauge the customer sentiment about what they were wearing and what they were talking about when they were wearing it. And then also, but not only that, also understanding what are the fashion trends? What types of clothing are becoming more and more adopted? What color palettes are becoming are gaining traction too as well? And so the whole idea now is to be able for retailers to kind of passively participate, observe the consumers as they live their lives on social media and infer from that merchandising insights as to what products they should wear.
Yeah, first of all, I have to agree with you that innovation section at NRF is always one of my favorite places to go to, and I think you're exactly right. The amount of innovation we saw this year certainly showed no signs of decreasing from previous years. The autonomous vehicles, the delivery options, as you said, a lot of the computer-aided vision systems for both merchandising purposes, but to your point, seeing what people are doing, understanding where fashion is taking stuff. I was really, really amazed, and always am, at the ingenuity, the innovation, the vision that people have for what's that next thing we're trying to solve, what's that next area of the retail experience we think we can add value to, and make that customer, meet that customer at the next place they want to be met, give them the next capability they need to have, and fulfill them in a way that maybe is being underfulfilled today. So I think that innovation section was amazing, and like I said, every year it's one of my favorite parts of NRF.
One of the things that we got to talk about, just because you can't walk away from this year's NRF without, is the metaverse. And it was really interesting to see how retailers were starting to embrace. So we've talked about online, we've talked about the in-store experience. This metaverse that we are in the very early stages, and yet it caught so much of the attention of so many of these keynotes and the like. I'll tell you that what's really interesting here is not only the first moves that some of the big retailers are taking into this space in terms of being able to create retail experiences on behalf of their customers. It's rather crude, right? The metaverse is not quite there yet in terms of that full-blown experience, but we're taking the first steps, and so it's something very much to watch. But was maybe more interesting was the precursors to the metaverse. And so what I mean by that is looking at, and maybe you can think of it as the next generation of the online experience, to see how retailers were creating these wonderfully high, it just immersive experiences without the accoutrements of AR, VR, and the like. So just even on the taking the current online experience and transforming that into an immersive experience. And I started to realize this is one area where the technology is, you have to know about it to appreciate it. It takes some remarkable elegance to be able to create a wonderfully immersive experience without crashing and overwhelming the computational capabilities of the phone. And so to sit down with various innovators who are kind of showing off their technology, saying, look at what we can do on a minimal platform, on an end user smartphone, to create these incredibly immersive experiences with, and by staying within the bounds of the computation, the technical wherewithal, the processing capabilities of the mobile device that so many consumers are using today. And so I think there's going to be a really interesting on-ramp, if you will. I would say that maybe my biggest takeaway here is it wasn't so much about the metaverse, but more so about the on-ramp to the metaverse. How do we go from where we are today to the metaverse when it gets more profitable? But I think some of the first concepts in creating these immersive experiences are very promising and pretty exciting. Jeff, any last thoughts as we kind of wrap this up?
No, I mean, I have to be honest. I mean, I think it was great kind of getting together and having this conversation about NRF. I think it's always enjoyable to sort of compare notes with you and see kind of what we saw, what we thought was interesting, what captured our attention. I think your comments about the metaverse are sort of a great place to sort of wrap up on. I think, it is this new area people are looking at. People are trying to understand how we can take advantage of the of that immersive experience and draw customers into, and quite frankly, in some cases, employees into support and engagement in that area. But I think it's a big uncharted territory. It's maybe sort of where AI was a decade ago, or 6-7 years ago at least. So I'm excited to see where that goes. To your point, the on ramps, and we're just beginning to see people begin to take advantage of those capabilities and bring some of those visualizations and some of those experiences to bear. It's quite exciting. I'm excited to see where it takes us in the coming years.
Well, Jeff, many thanks for participating in our conversation today. We've covered quite a bit of ground and looking at how retail is changing. The NRF Big Show, it met its name. It was a big show, and it showed us kind of how retail is changing today, changing very quickly in so many different ways as it relates to the customer experience, as it relates to the employee experience, and into the automation that's even taking place in the retail operations too as well. We thank you very much for participating in our show, and we invite you to continue the dialogue, to engage with us on LinkedIn and Twitter and the like. Have a great day.